vividly remember a conversation I had with a student in one of my classes regarding the recent news event our teacher had made our main topic of discussion. When I turned to her to ask when we'll start researching, I'd seen she'd already pulled out her math homework. I tapped her again to ask when we should start, and she shrugged me away saying, yeah, I'll worry about all that stuff after I get into UCLA, okay? Now this interaction and many more beg the question, what is this bubble of indifference that Irvington and other Bay Area high schools have? And how do we address this? To begin, let's start by talking about what empathy really is, then moving on to assessing the issue within this, then being presented with testimonials from Irvington students, and lastly addressing the root issue. To begin with, what truly is empathy? There are three main types of empathy: cognitive, compassionate, and emotional. Cognitive empathy is being able to put yourself in a new perspective and see something from an outlook you usually would not. Now this is something a lot of Irvington and Bay Area students lack, and this is something we should be addressing today. A recent study led by Sarah H. Kadam from the University of Michigan shows that over 75% of students today rated themselves as less empathetic than the student 30 years ago. Now this does pose a concern, but how may this relate to Irvington students specifically? As we know, a lot of the students within our school and the Bay Area are forced to primarily focus on their own grades. And though there are a few students that do have volunteer service efforts, let's be honest, oftentimes it's for college applications or resume building, both which are unauthentic and lacking. Now, let's look at a few testimonials from Irvington students and see what they have to say. One of the students scoffs with frustration by saying that Irvington students live in such a competitive environment that they're forced to do anything to get a 4.0, including hurting other students to do so. Another student says with anger, "Listen, I'm more concerned about my math grade than something that's happening on the other side of the world." It's an interesting phenomenon, is it not? To understand further about this issue of the lack of empathy, I decided to do a data collection survey myself. By interviewing various students with different backgrounds, age ranges, and more, I was able to find results that may shock. As you know, one of the questions I ask students is current events something that you usually pay attention to? And 2/3 of students say rarely. I ask again, is your grade something that you highly prioritize? And 100% of students say always. And hey, I'm one of those students as well. Now our last question is something that was a little bit trickier. As we all know, the Afghanistan war has been raging for over 20 years, and it's appeared in the news and media time and time again. Now, I asked students, what was the primary reason the Afghanistan war began? And this is something many students should know, as over half the respondents taking the survey were history students already. You know what, why don't you guys have a try? Would anyone like to answer the question? Yes?
Red, Afghanistan was defending itself.
Unfortunately, you are wrong. The correct answer choice is the yellow section, which only 8.3% of people got right. Now let that sink in. Only 8.3%, which is less than 1/10 of students within our school, got a basic current events question right, and this just continues to prove our theory. Now, it's evident that current events and awareness of surroundings is something that Irvington students lack. And here is where I'd like to propose a solution. Now, in order to give students something and have students step forward towards current events, instead of students having to leave their line of comfort, we'll have to start by bringing the current events to them. Okay, so I know the image of a cow over here is pretty confusing, but I promise I can explain. I remember in 4th grade, around 7 years ago, I had an assembly where they brought a live cow to our elementary school, and they taught us how to milk it. And I'm not sure what possessed the school to think that elementary schoolers would need to learn how to milk a cow, but I must say that event has really left a mark in my mind, and I still remember it with flourish 7 years later. Similarly, by bringing an expert on a current event to our school, information from a primary source is much more helpful and interesting than a tertiary source like your teacher. By having assemblies within our school, using our flex schedule we currently have, we can have assemblies and bring sources to our school and host events where Irvington students can come themselves and learn. And this kind of creates an environment where students are more encouraged to learn about new things. And hey, the added bonus of getting to skip school isn't quite shabby either. Now, in addition to assemblies, we also have morning announcements. With morning announcements, we can broadcast a short 1 to 2 minute address to all the students on a specific current event of the week or the day. And by having a morning announcement every day, just a short snippet, it can give students a little bit more, maybe a new fun fact they didn't know the other day. And this kind of shifts the focus away from just academics. By having the announcements maybe at 10:45, just wait until the clock hits, and voila! There's the morning announcements for the day. Now lastly, in order to address the really root issue of this, we can understand what is causing this indifference, we look into why students are so stressed. After seeing that indifference is caused by the stress in many of the students, the toxic college culture, we can see that it's important to provide students a method of a comfort or a figure of advice. Now, usually counselors are supposed to be there to help a student along their pathway of high school, but it's often common that counselors aren't someone a student feels very comfortable in, and oftentimes the timings don't sync up either. Now, this is where I like to propose alumni. With our Irvington alumni, students can feel more confident that they're confiding in someone who's like-minded and similar to them as well. By talking to alumni about advice on future majors, courses in high school, maybe future internships, students can feel more comfortable and connected and maybe learn more things that they didn't know about their current school or teachers. And alumni are a valuable resource that would provide helpful. I've contacted various alumni through email, messages, and various platforms, and they're more than ever ready to help. Now, with all our methods of outreach, including assemblies, alumni, morning announcements, and more, we can really increase the awareness and ideas of current events within our school and shift away from the focus primarily on academics. By moving away from the toxic college culture of just focusing on getting a 4.0, we can increase the empathy in our school within all of these methods of outreach. Now, in order to shift away from this indifference, the pin is in our hands, and only we can pop this confining bubble of indifference. Thank you.